Okay, were you surprised at all when you learnt that the Remain camp is funded by Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley?
I wasn't surprised at all to discover where the Remain camp has got most of its money from, the big banks, and particularly in the case of one or two of the big banks, those banks that actually were very, very involved in the terrible economic situation we had just a few years ago. Clearly, the big institutions and the big banks and the big institutions with an interest in the EU have got an interest in keeping the status quo. It works for them. The EU is now very clearly a supporter of multinational corporations, of the global corporations. We've seen that with the TTIP debate that's going on, the TTIP negotiations in secret. They're not interested in an EU where people make decisions. They're interested in a perpetuation of global corporations and the multinationals really deciding and running. And as we've seen from some of the very ill-advised remarks of European Union commissioners and presidents, they don't actually want people to have a say. They don't really like politicians in national governments because they think that they might want to overturn what they're doing. And I think it's a very clear signal of just how anti-democratic, not just undemocratic, but anti-democratic the European Union is.
We're often told that all sort of respectable global economic institutions back Remain. So the IMF, the OECD, Treasury, Bank of England, and as we mentioned, the big banks. Should the public take these warnings from these institutions as sort of neutral advice?
It's very interesting that all the big institutions like the IMF and the independent banks and all of the economists who want us to stay in and warn about the dangers of leaving are exactly the same people and institutions that warned the United Kingdom that if they didn't join the euro, the country would be in a terrible state. Now, they were so wrong then, and some of the leading politicians like Michael Heseltine, Peter Mandelson, Paddy Ashdown, all of these people who are telling us now how terrible it would be if we were to dare to vote to leave on June the 23rd, were wrong on the single currency. They were also very wrong on promoting or advertising the fact that there was going to be an economic downturn just a few years ago. So they can't really work out what's going to happen 3 months in advance. So the idea that everything is going to be so dreadful has to be treated really with the pinch of salt that it deserves.